It was a crisp autumn evening when the first cracks in my world began to show. Claire, my wife of 7 years, had gone out with her friends, or so she claimed, leaving me alone with a bottle of wine and an old movie to pass the time. Over the years, I had learned her habits, her rhythms, her tells. That night, something felt off. Her voice on the phone had been too bright, her laughter forced and unnatural. Still, I convinced myself not to overthink it. But when she walked through the door just after midnight, giggling like a teenager sneaking in past curfew, the uneasy feeling returned tenfold. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly disheveled, and clinging to her skin was a scent that didn't belong to me, another man's cologne. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, pretending I hadn't noticed. She flopped onto the couch, kicking off her heels with a carefree grin. "You're in a good mood," I observed, setting down my glass. "Yeah, it was a great night," she chirped, her voice unusually high-pitched. "The girls and I had such a fun time. Nothing crazy, just drinks and laughs." I nodded, studying her closely. "Glad to hear it." As the night wore on, I noticed how she avoided my gaze, how she clutched her phone as if it were a lifeline. Suspicion crept in, but I said nothing. Confrontation wasn't my style, not yet, anyway. Instead, I chose to wait and watch. Trust had been the foundation of our marriage. Or so I had believed. The next morning, Claire was uncharacteristically cheerful, humming as she made breakfast. Her phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter, but she made no move to check it. The moment she stepped out of the room, temptation got the better of me. I picked up her phone, my heart pounding as I unlocked it with the passcode we had always shared. One of those little signs of trust that now felt like a cruel joke. The messages were damning. "Last night was amazing. I can still feel your touch." My vision blurred as I scrolled through the thread from a contact labeled M. There were photos too, Claire, laughing with a glass in hand, draped across a man I didn't recognize, the dim glow of a hotel room lamp casting damning shadows. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. Rage would come later. For now, I needed clarity, a plan. When Claire returned, she kissed me on the cheek and handed me a plate of eggs, her smile as radiant as ever. How could she? How could she pretend everything was fine after what she had done? Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home, watching, listening, piecing together the extent of her deceit. The one-night stand wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even a one-time thing. Claire and Em had been meeting for months, stealing moments I had thought were ours. The rage simmered beneath my skin, but I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I focused on gathering evidence. Texts, photos, even the receipts she carelessly left in her purse. My plan began to take shape, and with it came a sense of grim satisfaction. On the surface, I remained the devoted husband. I cooked her favorite meals, laughed at her jokes, and even planned a romantic weekend getaway. Just the two of us. Claire seemed relieved, as if my attentiveness absolved her of guilt. Little did she know, I was setting the stage for her downfall. The weekend trip was my masterpiece. I booked a secluded cabin in the mountains, picturesque and peaceful. Claire was thrilled, gushing about how much she needed the escape. I packed our bags, ensuring everything was perfect, including my camera equipment. A new hobby, I had told her. She didn't question it. The first night was idyllic, at least on the surface. We drank wine by the fire, reminisced about our early days, even danced under the stars. But my mind was elsewhere, fixated on the culmination of my plan. The next morning, I suggested she sleep in while I went out to take landscape photos. She agreed, snuggling deeper into the blankets as I grabbed my gear and left. Only, I didn't take landscape shots. Instead, I set up hidden cameras throughout the cabin, capturing angles that would tell the story I needed to tell. By the time Claire woke up, I suggested a hike, claiming I had found a beautiful spot nearby. She hesitated but eventually agreed. We spent hours wandering the trails, and for a fleeting moment, I almost forgot the betrayal. Almost. Back at the cabin, her phone buzzed incessantly. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to one of annoyance. "Work stuff?" she muttered, dismissing the notifications. I knew better. That evening, I prepared her favorite dinner, refilling her wine glass every time it neared empty. She laughed, carefree, unaware of the storm brewing. When she excused herself to the bathroom, I took her phone and sent a single text to M. "Let's end this." Then I deleted the thread, leaving no trace. By the time we returned home, Claire was back to her usual self, her laughter echoing through the house. But then she reached for her purse and froze. Her fingers fumbled through the bag, panic growing with each second. "Where is it?" she muttered, voice trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning concern. "My wedding ring," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with mock sympathy. "When was the last time you had it?" She looked at me then, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. I only smiled. The game had just begun. "I don't know. I must have taken it off somewhere." Of course, I had hidden it. The ring, once a symbol of our commitment, was now just another piece in my carefully crafted revenge. The next morning, I set my plan into motion. I had spent weeks preparing a file, meticulously organized, detailing every sordid aspect of her affair in excruciating detail. Photos, messages, receipts, each a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I left the file on the kitchen table, knowing she would find it. When she did, the color drained from her face, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "The truth," I said calmly. "The truth you've been hiding from me for months." She stammered, reaching for an excuse, an explanation, anything to justify the unjustifiable. But I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "I don't want your excuses, Claire. I want you gone." Her eyes widened, tears pooling at the edges. "Please, we can work through this. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I had already spoken to a lawyer, ensuring that the divorce would be swift and entirely in my favor. The evidence I had gathered was enough to secure everything: the house, the car, the savings. Claire had no idea what was coming. As she packed her bags between desperate sobs, I felt nothing. No remorse, no sympathy, just a cold satisfaction. She had shattered our marriage, our trust. This was justice. In the weeks that followed, I moved on, rebuilding my life one deliberate step at a time. Claire, however, floundered. Her affair partner had ghosted her the moment things got complicated, leaving her to face the wreckage alone. Friends we had shared began to distance themselves, siding with me when they learned the truth. One by one, the walls closed in on her. She had lost everything. One evening, as I sat on my porch with a glass of whiskey in hand, I reflected on the months that had passed. The sting of betrayal still lingered, a dull ache I doubted would ever fully disappear. But along with it came something else, something better, a sense of triumph. I had taken back control. I had refused to be the victim. Claire's laughter, once a cruel ghost haunting my thoughts, had been replaced by my own, a laughter born of freedom, resilience, and the undeniable taste of revenge.